Is Carl Kelley, his pathway is presentation mastery, level 1, his second speech, writing a speech with purpose. And the title is Bleeping, Great to Be Alive. Carl Kelley. Bleeping,
Bleeping.
great to be alive.
Right, hopefully I'll be more live than bleeping. Anyway, the year was 1969 in Sacramento, California. I was 17 years old, a junior in high school. I was, like many people my age, I was wondering what was happening next. There was some sort of revolution on the way, but it wasn't coming through. Anyway, there was one person who wasn't in limbo, and that was Carol Johnson. She knew where she was going. She strode through Kennedy High with purpose and conviction. And with her bare feet, she stood 5'10", and she put on stacked heels beneath that so she could look down on most men. With each step she took, in her long legs, with her wrapped in pantyhose and her extra short skirts, her blonde hair just shimmered as she strode through those halls. Anyway, the blonde hair was such that she couldn't see her eyebrows, so she painted an extra set underneath. Extra fierce. And that came in handy when she wanted to ridicule. She would twist her mouth into a mock smile and bat her eyelashes and glare at you at the same time. That was pretty useful. There was no girl like her at school, and it was everything I could do not to mouth breathe in her presence. Me, I was tall, skinny, had no girlfriend experience. I don't know what I said to get invited over to her house, but there I was, outside of her small art studio in her backyard that her adopted dad built for her, listening to her while she painted with acrylics, and we listened to some obscure music. One of her paintings was of 2 Christmas packages. One had the Stars and Stripes, and one had a Soviet, the hammer and sickle on them. And one day I got really lucky, and she led me into the living room and played classical piano for me. I believe it was something by Aaron Copland. After that, to top that off, she led me into the kitchen and then whipped up a plate of fettuccine alfredo with mushrooms and onions. It was a tour de force, and I got dinner and a show that day. But I was still in the friend zone, and I had to find a way to bust out, right? So I got this sleeveless undershirt and bought some acrylics, and I painted the Stars and Stripes on it. I put it on a hanger, and I got up onto the front porch, and I rang the doorbell, and the door opened, and I was ready to surprise her, and there she was, clinging to the arm of this extra muscular college jock, and she was giving me that look, that look. And I just handed that hanger off like a baton in a relay race and beat a hasty retreat. I then watched her cycle through a couple different boyfriends that she couldn't control. And then one day, to my surprise, she called me up from her bullpen, and we lost our virginity together in my garage bedroom. And we were putting on our clothes when my mom pulled into the garage. She later retained this favor on her home court. She pulled me into her family bathroom while her parents were home. We were so naughty. One of my favorite memories was I took her to the junior prom, and she wasn't going to go unless she could flip the script. So she had me go down to San Francisco and rent a zoot suit so she could go 1940 style. And this was the result, right here. Yeah, this was me back when you could dress me up, but you couldn't take me anywhere. And this is Carol, you could tell from her x-ray eyes, you know. And look, notice the placement of her left hand. Okay? That is ownership. That is dominant energy. Well, a couple weeks later, I got a little tired of that. And I said, Carol, I think we should, take a break from this relationship for a little while. She didn't say a word. Her face got hard. She got in her car, drove off. And that's the last we spoke to each other for decades. But around 1997, it just been gnawing at me that we didn't end things really well. And I hunted her down to make an apology. And I found her in Sacramento in a large office. She was the president of an ad agency that she had founded, and she landed some major accounts like regional transit. And her signature campaign was painting all the buses to look like loaves of Wonder Bread, so that public transit became, rolling art. So after laying out all her successes and sitting there behind her big desk, silhouetting a large plate glass window, I began my confession. I said, Carol, the reason I left you is because I was overmatched. You did not need me. And I never really learned what she made of that confession. You couldn't see her face, and she didn't say much. Anyway, we parted for a couple years, and then I was trying to get money for a startup around the .com era. And she introduced me to an investor. It didn't go anywhere. 2 years later, in 2002, we had lunch, and over lunch tried to laugh it off. And it was then she announced that she'd been diagnosed with a rare blood disease. And she looked shook as she told me about going to the ER and that, but at the end she just kind of dismissed her prognosis and said, my life isn't certain as it's always been, but meanwhile it's fucking great to be alive. And so, I left lunch thinking, all right, Carol will handle it just as usual. Three months later, I was attending her wedding and was given the honor of giving the bride away. It was an Englishman, John Windsor, a successful engineer. Some people said that she gave me that duty in order to, get over her. But I had no regrets, and Carol made it easy for me because she was carrying 80 pounds that she didn't have in high school. About 4 months later, I got a call I wish I didn't get. The call was that she was dying and that I should come see her if I had anything to say. So the sun was blazing that day. I got into that air-conditioned house, and the caretaker led me back to the bed where she lay, and she was just an emaciated corpse. I mean, the flesh was gone. Very stiff, she couldn't move, her eyes wouldn't open. The only noise in the room was the sound of the wind passing through her lips, which would not close. But I had the feeling she could still hear me. So I knelt by her side and I opened with, well, Carol, it looks like I'm finally gonna get a word in edgewise. Waited, no response, so the humor was wasted. So then I began bantering about how great she was and how much she meant to me and how she'd shaped me and how I was going to live up to the potential she saw in me the rest of my days. She died a few weeks later, January 7th, 2003, and she left the world better than she found it, as evidenced by the 300 people that showed up at her memorial, and many from charities which she championed. I spoke last, and I ended with this. I said, if you knew Carol well, and you weren't convinced that it was great to be alive, you just weren't paying attention. Adam Toastmaster.
speech. I wish I was wearing my 6-inch heels tonight. It's great to fucking be alive.